My little brother showed up at my door, pale and shaking, whispering that our parents were planning something worse than I could ever imagine. That was the moment I knew it was war. Thanksgiving dinner. Supposed to be laughter, stories, and the smell of roasted turkey filling the house. Instead, it turned into the moment I realized just how far my parents were willing to push me. It started when my mom, with that tight little smile she gets when she's about to make a scene, slid a shiny pair of keys across the table, straight to my younger brother Ethan. She said it like a toast, like a grand announcement, for our son, the one with a bright future ahead. The chandelier light caught the polished metal, throwing a little sparkle right into my eyes. Ethan froze mid-bite, his fork hovering over a slice of turkey so dry it looked like it might crumble into dust. His face flushed crimson, and honestly, I couldn't even blame him. He didn't ask for this. My sister Claire leaned back with that smug grin she always wears when someone else is getting thrown under the bus. My dad suddenly found the label on his wine bottle the most fascinating thing in the world. And me? I felt every pair of eyes at that table slide toward me. That unspoken comparison, Ethan the golden boy, me the disappointment, hung in the air like smoke. And then my mom went in for the kill. She didn't whisper. She didn't soften it. She just looked at me, right in front of the entire family, and said, "You're not getting a seat at the table this year. Not after you refuse to help your brother out." The room went dead silent. You could have heard the cranberry sauce plop back into the bowl. I didn't need her to explain. Months ago, my parents had casually mentioned that since I'd already worked hard, paid off my loans, and bought my own house, I should cover Ethan's $60,000 in student debt. Like it was just expected. Like I'd been saving up for their responsibility. And when I told them no, that I wasn't about to drown myself in someone else's financial mess, my mom froze me out. My dad muttered something about family loyalty. And Claire? She smirked, like it was the best drama she'd ever seen. But this? Public humiliation on Thanksgiving? That was a new level of betrayal. Ethan's face was beet red now, his hands twitching like he wanted to push the keys back across the table. My dad still wouldn't look at me. Claire's arms were folded, smug as ever. My Aunt Linda shifted in her seat. My cousin Sam gave me this quick, pitying look. And my grandfather, he just shook his head, the disappointment etched deep in his wrinkled face. The only person brave enough to speak was my Uncle Mike, who finally set his fork down with a loud clatter and said, "Now hold on. That's not fair. Jack's not responsible for anyone else's debt." For a split second, I almost laughed. Uncle Mike, the guy who could turn a 5-minute fishing story into a 2-hour saga, was the only one willing to call my mom out. But the look she shot him, sharp enough to cut glass, was enough to shut the whole table down again. "Family is supposed to support each other," she snapped, her voice rising. And that was it. My chest felt hot, like my blood was boiling under my skin. My pulse thundered in my ears. I could have shouted. I could have fought back. But instead, I pushed my chair back slowly, the wooden legs scraping across the polished floor. I looked at Ethan, just long enough to give him a small nod, to let him know none of this was on him. Then I stood, walked out of that perfect little dining room, and didn't look back. No words. No slammed door. Just me stepping into the freezing November night, the air burning in my lungs with every angry breath I took. And that was the moment I realized, my parents weren't just playing favorites. They were willing to turn me into the villain in front of everyone, just because I wouldn't let them control me with money. But what they didn't know, was that I already had a plan. That night, sleep was impossible. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, the events of dinner replaying in my head like a broken record. Every smirk from Claire, every silent sip of wine from my dad, every calculated word from my mother, it all kept looping. And with every replay, my anger deepened. I thought about all the years I'd put this family first. The overtime shifts, the birthdays I missed because I was grinding at work, the times I sacrificed my own plans just to keep things afloat. And this? This was the thanks I got? To be cornered at Thanksgiving, treated like some family ATM, and humiliated in front of everyone. By sunrise, I was done. Done playing the safety net, done being the one they leaned on whenever it was convenient. I made a couple of calls, tugged on a few strings I knew they didn't even realize I had. By the time my parents shuffled into their morning routine, their perfect little world was already cracking. The garage door? Wouldn't budge. Instead, a bright red notice was slapped across it, seized property. The kind of paper that looks official enough to make your stomach drop. My mom, I could picture her, standing there in her bathrobe, phone pressed tight against her ear, panic rising in her voice as she dialed the dealership. My dad? Still half asleep, fumbling with the remote, pressing the button over and over like maybe the door would magically start working again. And Claire? Rolling her eyes, muttering something sarcastic in the background, because heaven forbid she miss a chance to be annoyed. And that was just the warm-up. I figured the calls would start early, but surprisingly, it wasn't until noon that my phone lit up. My mom's number. I let it ring. And then again. Then my dad. Over and over, shorter, angrier each time. By the 5th attempt, curiosity got the better of me, so I finally swiped to answer. "Jack. What is going on?" she snapped, her voice already sharp with panic. "Why is our garage locked? Why are our accounts frozen? Is this some kind of sick joke?" I leaned back on my old secondhand couch, stretched my legs out, and let a slow smile creep across my face. "It's not a joke, Mom," I said evenly. "It's business." That shut her up. For a moment, at least. "Business," she sputtered. "This is your family. You can't just..." I cut her off. Funny, I thought family meant mutual respect. Not trying to humiliate your son in front of everyone. not treating me like an open wallet because I finally managed to crawl out of the hole I was in. Silence. For a second, all I could hear was the faint chaos on their end, my dad's muffled voice asking questions, her probably waving him into silence like she always does when she needs control. When she came back, her voice was tighter, like she was trying to reel herself back in. Jack, this isn't the way to handle things. You've taken it too far. I almost laughed right then. Too far? After years of bending over backward, after her little stunt at Thanksgiving? This was what she considered too far. I took a deep breath, forcing my tone to stay calm. Mom, you wanted to teach me a lesson at dinner, right? About loyalty? About support? Well, consider this my lesson to you. Actions have consequences. And with that, I hung up. The fallout was instant and messy. The car insurance, still tied to their joint business account, was suddenly under audit. Let's just say I'd nudged a friend in the industry to make that happen. The garage lockout? That one was pure personal flair, my way of reminding them I had more leverage than they realized. The family group chat blew up. Aunt Linda, usually the quiet observer, finally lost her cool, calling my mom out for humiliating me in front of everyone. Uncle Mike? He practically fanned the flames, pointing out that if anyone needed a reality check, it was my parents. And then, the one call that actually mattered came in. My grandparents. I'd always had a bond with them, forged during summers spent on their farm. I could still smell the hay, hear the hum of the old tractor as my grandfather taught me how to drive it, and remember sitting on the porch listening to his stories. My grandmother's voice was gentle but firm. Jack, sweetheart, your mother's raising hell with the family, saying you've gone rogue. But I know what really happened. Don't let them bully you. You did the right thing. And then my grandfather. He's a man of few words, the kind who doesn't waste breath unless it matters. His voice came low, gravelly. Proud of you, son. That meant more than 1,000 fake apologies from my parents ever could. I hung up feeling something I hadn't in years, steady. Like I finally had solid ground under my feet. But deep down, I knew one thing, my parents weren't going to back down. The storm was only just beginning. And I had a few more moves left to play. The silence after that first wave of phone calls was almost worse than the chaos itself. I knew my parents too well, quiet never meant surrender. Quiet meant plotting. I could practically see it, my mom pacing the living room, nails digging into the armrest of her leather chair as she muttered about how to put me back in line. And my dad? Standing by the fireplace like some washed-up movie villain, swirling his wine as if he could find answers in the glass. And sure enough, their retaliation didn't take long. A few nights later, I came home from work, humming to myself, just ready to collapse on the couch. But the second I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. My front door, wide open. My stomach dropped like a stone. I rushed inside, half expecting to see shattered glass, stolen electronics, a ransacked house. But that's not what I found. Nothing was stolen. Instead, everything had been moved. My books, usually lined neatly on my shelves, were now stacked carelessly in uneven towers. The framed photos of friends and family? Turned backward, their faces pressed against the wall like some kind of twisted statement. Desk drawers dumped out, their contents scattered across the floor. Even my kitchen cabinets had been emptied, plates and cups stacked into an ugly little pile on the counter. And then I saw it, the note. Taped right to the refrigerator, written in that unmistakable handwriting. Family takes care of each other. You'll come around. No signature. Didn't need one. My blood went cold. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed. My mom picked up on the second ring, her voice infuriatingly calm, almost playful. Jack, honey. I see you've been home. My jaw clenched so tight it hurt. What the hell did you do to my place? Oh, don't be so dramatic, she drawled, sounding bored, like I was overreacting. It's just a reminder. You're still part of this family, whether you like it or not. You can't just cut us off without consequence. I closed my eyes, pressing a hand against the wall to steady myself. My voice came out low, barely controlled. Breaking into my house isn't family, Mom. It's a crime. She laughed. Laughed. A mocking little sound that made my skin crawl. Don't be so dramatic, Jack. We just needed to remind you where you come from. That was it for me. I hung up before I could say something I'd regret. The rage burned in my chest, a sharp, icy weight that wouldn't let me breathe. I spent hours putting my place back together, every flipped photo and scattered drawer stoking the fire inside me. I was finally calming down, about to call it a night, when the doorbell rang. My body went stiff, heart pounding. For a second, I pictured them standing there, smug, ready to gloat. But it wasn't my parents. It was Ethan. He looked pale, jittery, his eyes darting over his shoulder like he expected them to appear any second. When I let him in, he didn't even sit down. He just leaned against the arm of the couch, his foot tapping nonstop against the hardwood. Jack, I need to talk to you, he blurted out, his voice shaky. Mom and Dad, they're planning something else. Something worse. My blood ran colder than when I found that note. They've lost it, he continued, words tumbling out like a flood. Mom's been on a warpath since Thanksgiving. She's talking about cutting you off completely. And she even mentioned selling Grandma's old house. The one she promised you. I froze. That house wasn't just real estate. It was summers in the countryside. My grandfather teaching me to drive his old truck, my grandmother humming while she baked pies, nights on the porch listening to stories about the good old days. It was supposed to be my inheritance, my connection to everything that actually mattered in this family. Why are you telling me this? I asked carefully, trying to steady my voice. Ethan's shoulders slumped. Because it's not right. You've done more for them than anyone. You worked your way through college, you built your own life, and now they're trying to make you the villain for setting a boundary. I don't want any part of it. I didn't ask for that car, and I definitely didn't ask to be used against you." For a moment, pride flickered through the storm of anger inside me. Ethan, of all people, was taking my side. What else? I pressed. He hesitated, rubbing his hands together, clearly torn. "They've been talking about dragging you back into the family business. Mom said if you won't play ball, they'll make sure you don't have a choice. She's already talking about pulling strings, freezing out your contacts, leveraging connections to cut you off." My pulse spiked, a bitter laugh escaping before I could stop it. Unbelievable. After everything, they still think they can control me. Ethan's eyes met mine, guilt and fear flashing together. "They don't see it as control. They think it's a lesson. That you owe them for raising you." I clapped his shoulder firmly. "I know this isn't on you. I appreciate you warning me." He gave a shaky nod, turned to leave, then paused at the door. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Jack, just be careful. They're not playing fair anymore." When the door clicked shut behind him, I sank into my couch, staring at the note still lying on the counter. The weight of Ethan's words pressed down on me. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. This was war. And if they wanted to escalate? Fine. I could escalate too. I grabbed my phone, scrolled to my lawyer's number, and hit dial. It was time to take the gloves off. For days, I moved like a man possessed, driven, focused, unstoppable. If my parents wanted a war, then fine. I'd give them one. But it would be fought on my terms. They thought they could corner me, guilt me into being the obedient son again, but they had no idea how far I was willing to go to protect the life I'd built from the ground up. The first step? Locking down my business. I called up my most important clients, calmly, discreetly. Contracts, sensitive files, financial trails, all quietly shifted into a separate LLC I'd set up years ago as my just-in-case vault. Untouchable. My parents wouldn't be able to poison a single connection before I'd already cut the strings. Next came the family business, the empire my father strutted around like he'd built, when really it was my grandfather's sweat and sacrifice that laid every brick. My mother had conveniently forgotten that when it came to finances, Grandpa had only ever trusted one person. Me. I met him at his favorite diner, the one with cracked red vinyl booths and bacon so greasy the smell alone clung to your clothes. He was already there, coffee black as tar, eyes sharp even in his old age. "Jack," he rasped, his smoker's voice low. "I hear your mother's stirring up trouble." I slid into the booth, leaning close. "She broke into my house, Grandpa. Ransacked the place. And now she's threatening to cut me out of the business. She even said she'd sell Grandma's old house, the one you promised me." His jaw tightened. His knotted hands gripped the mug until his knuckles went white. I figured it'd come to this. She's always been too controlling for her own good. I leaned in, my voice steady but burning with resolve. "I can't let them take everything I've worked for. I won't be their pawn." For a long moment, he just studied me. Then, slowly, a small approving smile tugged at the corners of his weathered face. "I was wondering when you'd finally stand up to them. Took you long enough. We talked for an hour, no, we planned." His voice calm, deliberate, laying out steps like chess moves. By the time I left, I wasn't just armed with a plan. I had the full weight of the family patriarch at my back. Grandma had already moved quietly too, transferring the deed of her old house into my name. My inheritance was secured, and for once, my parents were powerless to stop it. Back in my car, I made one more call, my lawyer. A restraining order was drafted that very night, spelling it out in black and white, any more harassment, any more stunts, and my parents would find themselves dragged into court. The next morning, I slid the thick envelope into the mailbox, and for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. I could almost picture my mom's hands trembling as she tore it open. Her carefully curated world cracking as she realized just how badly she had miscalculated. And then, as if fate knew I needed a reminder I wasn't fighting this alone, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Thanks for standing up for yourself, Jack. I'm with you on this. I'll handle Mom and Dad." I leaned against my car, the winter air burning my lungs, a strange peace settling over me. For the first time, my brother had found his voice, and he was choosing to stand beside me. That felt like the first real victory. The fallout came quickly. My parents, so used to controlling the family narrative, suddenly found themselves on the outside looking in. Word spread fast. Aunt Linda told me my mom had been calling everyone she could think of, begging for allies. But most of the family had already seen enough. They were done. And then, one morning, another text from Ethan. Short. Heavy. "Grandma and Grandpa want you to come by. It's important." That evening, I pulled into their long gravel driveway, the crunch under my tires echoing memories of childhood summers. The house, now mine, glowed with warm yellow light against the cold, dimming sky. It felt like stepping back into my past, only this time everything was different. Inside, my grandparents sat side by side on their worn old couch, their hands clasped. A stack of thick folders lay on the coffee table. Ethan sat nearby, tapping his foot nervously, not meeting my eyes. My grandfather looked up, his sharp gray gaze locking onto mine. Slowly, he slid his glasses off and set them on the folder. "Sit down, Jack." I lowered myself into the old armchair, the one I used to curl up in as a boy while he told me stories about building the business from scratch. My heart thudded heavy in my chest. "Jack," Grandma began, her voice soft but resolute, "we've made some hard decisions." Grandpa cleared his throat, his voice gravelly but firm. "Your parents, they've forgotten what this family stands for. They've crossed lines I never thought they'd cross. And I won't let them tear this family apart any further." He leaned forward, eyes steel. We're cutting them off. Completely. The words hit me like a hammer. I'd braced for conflict, for lectures about loyalty. But this? This was scorched earth. They've lost sight of what matters, Grandma said, her voice steadying as fire sparked in her eyes. Family isn't about control. It's not about money or power. It's about trust, respect, and love. And they've broken that. Grandpa pushed the folders toward me. Our wills have been updated. The house. The land. The business shares. Everything goes to you and Ethan. My pulse roared in my ears. This wasn't just inheritance. This was a full transfer of power. My parents' empire, built on manipulation and intimidation, had just crumbled in one evening. Are you sure? I managed, my voice rough. They're still your children. His expression hardened, jaw set with the grit of a man who had clawed his way up from nothing. They stopped being my children the day they turned on you. I can't change what they've become. But I can protect what I've built. Ethan finally looked up, guilt and relief flickering across his face. I warned them this was coming. I told them to respect your boundaries. They didn't listen. Grandma reached out, her frail hand resting on Grandpa's. The deed to this house is already yours, Jack. In our hearts, it always was. The room fell into silence. Only the steady tick of the grandfather clock filled the air, each second closing the chapter on my parents' reign. Grandpa exhaled heavily, shoulders sagging. Don't let them drag you back into their games, Jack. Build your own life. Make it yours. I stood slowly, hugging them both. Their frail bodies pressed tight against me, but I could still feel the strength in them, the strength they were now passing on to me. As I stepped back out into the night, the cold air sharp against my face, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. Not just financial. Not just legal. But freedom from the chains of expectation, manipulation, and guilt. I took a deep breath, the winter air burning my lungs, and smiled. For the first time in my life, I could finally breathe.